حي على الفلاح.
So this next story is a slightly emotional, sad story. The Prophet ﷺ went through moments of joy, and he had many moments of sadness as well. It's interesting that some of the wives of the Prophet would say, you know, when he was outside, he was always seen smiling, but when he was in the home, many times we would see him crying, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he said, if you knew what I knew, you would laugh less, you would cry more, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we know that the Prophet ﷺ had many children. He had many sons as well. In fact, according to some narrations, the Prophet ﷺ had 3 sons: Abdullah, Qasim, and Ibrahim. So all 3 sons, subhanAllah, passed away when they were very young. And in one incident, it may have been Qasim, he reached an age where he was just old enough to walk, just old enough to talk, you know, that kind of age where a child becomes, you know, more lovable, adorable to their parents. And Allah decreed that he pass away. So the Prophet ﷺ, he went to the graveyard, he took his child and he buried his son, made the janazah, and he was sat by the grave making dua, and some of the companions saw him crying. One companion was very surprised that the Prophet is crying. So he said, Ya Rasulullah, do you cry? He said, the heart feels grief, the eyes shed tears, but I will never say anything that goes against the qadr of Allah. And I remember hearing this beautiful saying of the Prophet ﷺ in his time of grief, and you appreciate, but you don't really see yourself being able to say those words in a similar moment. Until not that long ago, one of my teachers, his wife had a miscarriage, I think at 7 or 8 months, very long into the pregnancy. And we went to the janazah of his, you know, of the child, and he had already named his son Musa, because they knew it was going to be a boy. They had named his son Musa, and we were outside the East Side of the Masjid, in the back entrance. I was standing there with a group of the brothers there, and one of the workers from the masjid came out, and he was holding a shoebox. And you know, in my mind, I didn't register what that was. And then when he handed it over to the sheikh, that's it, that's the body of the child. Okay, so we went to Gardens of Peace, and we were walking, and all of a sudden we stopped because there was a tiny little hole in the ground, and I was like, wow, this is the grave. Yeah, things that you don't expect, that the grave is going to be that small, tiny. And then after, you know, burying the child, I saw, you know, the sheikh, his eyes swelled up with tears, and he was crying. And as we were, you know, reassuring him, giving him dua, he said the same thing that Prophet said. He said that the heart feels grief, the eyes shed tears, but we will not say anything that goes against the qadr of Allah. Subhanallah. So this is great show of character, that a person can embody the teaching of the Prophet ﷺ in the most difficult time. May Allah give us character like that. Allahumma ameen. So what happened is that the Prophet ﷺ, he explains that, you know, he's beside himself in grief, he's crying, and then he comes home. Now this is in the early days of the Meccan era, where he has a lot of enemies. And so as he's walking home, he hears some people are cheering, clapping, whistling, celebrating over the death of the son of the Prophet ﷺ. And they are saying, Butira Muhammadun il-layla, Butira Muhammadun il-layla. Tonight Muhammad has been cut off. Meaning he's got no son left to continue his legacy. And of the people celebrating was none other than his own uncle Abu Lahab. Very difficult for the Prophet ﷺ. So this added to the grief, added to the pain, added to the suffering. And it was in that time, we don't know whether it was that day or the day after, that it is said a surah was revealed to the Prophet ﷺ. A surah that we all read in our salah, most probably because it's so short. This surah was revealed to console the Prophet ﷺ, to reassure him and to give him a way to lift himself in that moment of sorrow. Surah Al-Kawthar. Now when you read it, you will have a different impression of this surah. Inna a'tainaka al-kawthar fasalli li rabbika wanhar inna shani'aka huwa al-abtar. Truly we have given you the gift of Al-Kawthar. So pray to your master and sacrifice. Indeed, the one who hates you, he has been cut off. So you remember the words Butira Muhammadun al-Layla, Butirat. What did Allah say? Inna sha'niyaka huwa al-abtar. Allah took the same word that Abu Lahab and those people said, put it in the surah, turned it against them. The only one who's going to be cut off is you, your enemy. And it's amazing to think that the Prophet, he was the nicest person you could ever meet, and he had enemies. Enemies that would hate his guts, enemies that would become happy when he was suffering, and they would become angry when he was happy. Why? Because the Prophet ﷺ, he reminds evil people of how evil they are. Do you know what I'm saying? Like when you're with good people, pious people, and you're not a good person, you feel uncomfortable. Like these people, they pray 5 times a day, they fast in the month of Ramadan. Me, I'm scum. And being with these people makes me uncomfortable. So either you turn on yourself or you turn on this person. And they turned on the Prophet ﷺ, even though he was so kind. So what happened is that Surah Al-Kawthar was revealed, and in a hadith in Sahih Muslim, Anas ibn Malik said that we were with the Prophet ﷺ, and he dozed off. Now, there were many ways in which the Prophet ﷺ would receive revelation, and it would affect him in different ways. One of the ways is that he would go into, it would seem like a state of sleep, slumber. But it wasn't the case that he was resting. In fact, it was the moment in which revelation was being brought down by Jibreel alayhi salam. So when the revelation came, Anas said, we saw him lift his head and he was smiling. And we said, Ya Rasulullah, what makes you laugh, smile like this? He said, right now, Allah has revealed to me a surah. And he started to recite, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir bismillahir rahmanir rahim, Inna a'tainaka al-kawthar fasalli li rabbika wanhar inna shani'aka huwa al-abtar. And now you might be thinking, okay, what's the connection between the Prophet ﷺ losing his son, Surah Al-Kawthar coming down, and him becoming happy? It's very interesting. They say that, Allah promised him Al-Kawthar. Al-Kawthar is what? A river in paradise. But that river in paradise is going to be full of water that is going to fill a pond known as Al-Hawd on Yawm Al-Qiyamah. And that pond is going to be surrounded by goblets, these tall, beautiful glasses. And in one hadith, they will number as many as the stars in the sky. And the person would be standing beside this pond, and then on Yawm Al-Qiyamah, his followers will arrive, thirsty. And they will take a cup, drink from this water, and they will never be thirsty again. And he said this water is sweeter than honey and is cooler than ice, and whoever drinks from it will never become thirsty again. May Allah make us from those people. And so now you're thinking, okay, so the Prophet ﷺ is being told that I'm going to give you this gift of Al-Kawthar, which is going to come with a whole nation of people that are going to be your followers that you haven't seen yet. And so even though we took one son from you, what we're going to give you in return in terms of an ummah is going to be so much greater than that. So you are suffering now, but there are many things for you to look forward to. And inside Surah Al-Kawthar, he's being given that reassurance that there is a gift awaiting you, subhanAllah. And that is what put a smile on the face of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. One of the very profound lessons we learn from this story is the importance of being able to overcome your emotions to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because it's easy to be mindful of Allah when everything's going well. You have money in your pocket, you have friends around you, you have comfort, luxuries. You can remember Allah. But as soon as things get difficult, maybe you fall sick, maybe you're financially in a jam, or some calamity befalls you, may Allah protect us all. But in that, when there's a storm in your life, it's very difficult then for you to rise above that and think of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, isn't it? But here the Prophet, when he lost his son, and it seems that it was the third son, the last of his sons, that he still never ever thought bad of Allah. Why? How? Because he was sad. At the same time, he didn't blame Allah. He was still satisfied with what Allah wanted. And here's the reason. The reason is because the Prophet, he distinguished between the calamity and the one who sent the calamity. When it comes to the calamity, it's okay to be upset, to be worried, to be fearful. But when you think of the one who sent the calamity, Allah, Ar-Rahman, Al-Wadud, Al-Mannan, you realize that there's a reason behind Allah sending that to me. And Allah would never choose a reason except that is good for me. So on the one side, you're sad, but on another side, you can see a reason to be grateful and to be faithful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.